Hi, Roxy Keller here again, baking my way through the Great British Baking Show challenges, and it's week 6, which is pastry week, and this is from season 5, 2017, and for the first challenge, which is the signature challenge, the bakers were asked to make 4 savory pies. Now, each pie can have the same filling. They just want each of the decorations on top to be different, but to all be part of a theme. So savory pies are very big in the UK, not quite as big here in the United States. We certainly have chicken pot pies and things like that, but not the large array of different kinds of pies that they have in Great Britain. So I am going to make a Tex-Mex pie. Now, the pie is supposed to have a short crust, which means a typical pie crust dough that you would have with a cherry pie, apple pie, that sort of thing. And because I'm making 4 of them, they can be kind of small. This is from here to here is 6 inches, and so I'm going to make 4 of these, again with a Tex-Mex flavor. So the ingredients are my own. This is my own recipe. It comes from an enchilada casserole that I make with these ingredients, and I don't know, I'll give it a try. I think it should be good. My only concern is how to make things stick together in the pie. So the meats have to stick together. So I'm going to use some rice, perhaps an egg. An egg often can hold things together. In a couple of the pies, I'm going to make mine slightly different because my husband doesn't like beans, so I'm going to make one that doesn't have beans. Then the other ones will have beans. Some will be spicier than others. So some people like really spicy food and some people don't. So mine are going to be slightly different, but some will have beans again, and hopefully that will help hold the meat together. So if you were to slice it, you could pull out a piece without everything falling apart. We'll see. On the Great British Baking Show, Paul Hollywood will slice it in half and actually pull the piece out. I mean, they're all about, it being completely one piece and the crust not falling apart and things like that. So hopefully I can do something like that. Again, that's not quite a big thing that we do, but I do have a pie dough recipe, a short crust recipe that I always use. I think it's delicious. I think it's flaky, and it's fairly straightforward. The pie dough I use is from the Food Network, and it's just called vodka pie dough, and it's just because there is vodka added to it, such that when the dough bakes and the alcohol is burning off, it creates little air pockets in the pastry. So it gives it a nice flaky texture. For my decorations, since I'm doing Tex-Mex, I have one that will have a taco on it, one with a sombrero, and 2 different kinds of chili peppers. So here's one chili pepper with some little fire on it, and here's a little chili pepper with some leaves on them. So I'll cut these out of pie dough and do a little bit of decorations with a knife and a little bit of food coloring before I put it in the oven to bake. So let's get started on the pie dough, and then I'll go over to the stovetop and start working on the meat and the rice. This recipe makes enough pie dough for 2 9-inch pie plates, or one pie that has a bottom crust and a top crust. And since I'm making 4 6-inch pies plus cutouts, I am going to triple this recipe, but I don't think triple that will fit into my food processor. And I like to mix the dough in the food processor because it just comes together really well, and that chops the butter, mixes the butter really well. I'm sure someday I will force myself to make one by hand, but not today. The one thing I don't like about this recipe is that it has the ingredients in cups rather than in weight. So I'm sure that I have weighed out the ingredients before, don't happen to remember or have written down what those are. So I'm going to use cups. And when you use cups, you may already know that you want to, make sure the flour is kind of fluffy, and then scoop the flour into your cup so that it doesn't mash down, and that's how much it's supposed to, What's kind of funny is that sometimes I'll see recipes with both cups and grams, and sometimes they have all-purpose flour weighing 120, sometimes 125. Sometimes I'll make a recipe using those measurements when it calls for cups, but then there's not enough flour. So I often have to add flour. So sometimes when I'm just doing the math myself, I'll just call it 130 grams for a cup. Let's see how much this one is. See, 139. That was a nice fluffy cup. And yeah. Okay, so I'm tripling the recipe, but then I'm taking half of that triple. So basically 1.5 times what the recipe says. So for that, I need 3 3/4 cups. Okay, so tripling and then halving means I need 525 grams if I use 140 as how much a cup weighs. So 525 grams of all-purpose flour. $5.25. The recipe calls for 1/3 cup of lard or vegetable shortening, and I have Crisco vegetable shortening, so that's what I'm going to use. So for the amount I'm mixing up here, I need half a cup. One and a half tablespoons of sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And overall, for this part of the dough, I'll need 27 grams of butter. And it calls for unsalted butter, but I'm using salted butter, and I know I added salt. But one of my complaints about a lot of pie doughs is that they taste very dull. I feel like they don't have enough salt. So this is how I do it. Now, you want to make sure to use very, very cold butter. So I'm going to chop up 9 grams of very cold butter to start, then we'll process, then we'll add some more. Nine grams of very cold butter cut into rather small pieces. I'm going to stir this just a little bit so that some of that butter will end up underneath the flour and not on top of everything else. Now I'm going to process this until it has the texture of fine meal. Okay, I knew that sounded wrong. When I was tripling it and then halving it, I said the wrong amount of butter. So the original recipe says 1.5 sticks or 12 tablespoons. So 3 times that would be 36 tablespoons. I'm doing half, so I need 18 tablespoons. So far I've added 9. I need to add 9 more tablespoons. With the addition of the rest of the butter, I need to process until it gets blended into, it says pea-sized pieces. We'll see. It usually comes together for me when I add the water and the vodka. So for this amount, I need about a little over 1/3 of a cup of vodka and 4 to 6 tablespoons of water. So I'll add the vodka first, and then I'll add enough water until it comes together. So I can run it without this piece in. So I may not even need any water. Came together pretty well. I'll add 1 tablespoon of ice cold water because when I roll it out, I'm going to end up getting some extra flour in the dough, and that'll tighten it up. Yeah, that looks great. The dough needs to chill in the refrigerator for an hour before we roll it out to put it in the pie. So I'm going to split this in half because this will make 2 of the pies, and then roll them in cling wrap and put them in the refrigerator. Okay, so that weighs 970 grams. So when I divide that into 2, each one will weigh 485 grams. Okay, so these will go into the refrigerator for an hour, and I'm going to make the other half of the pie dough and put those 2 in the refrigerator. Okay, so the pie dough is in the refrigerator. Now I'm going to start making the filling. So my filling includes ground beef, corn, rice, and in some of them I'll have some beans. So the ground beef will then have some taco spices, and I'm using a packaged Mexican flavored rice, and I make all of these over on a stovetop. So I'll go over to the stovetop now. In this skillet, I'll start browning the 2 pounds of 93% lean ground beef. Set that on medium-high. Then I'll start the rice in this, and I'm using a Rice-A-Roni packaged rice. I need to start with 2 tablespoons of butter. I need to saute the rice mixture. It's got rice and pasta. Little orzo, I think. Turning it down to medium so it won't burn. I just want it to turn a golden brown color before I add the spices and the water. turning slightly golden. That's a good color, so I'll add the seasonings and 2 1/4 cups of water. I'm going to turn it up so I can bring it to a boil, and after it comes to a boil, I'll put the lid on and let it simmer for 15 to 20 minutes. Probably I'll do 20 minutes because I want it well done. With the ground beef all brown, I rehydrated 2 tablespoons of dried minced onion. I'm going to run that through this sieve into the sink and then add the onion to the meat. The rice mixture has come to a boil, so I'm going to put the lid on and turn that down to low or medium low and set my timer for 20 minutes. Now for my hamburger meat, I like to keep cooking until all of the moisture boils off, and I like my meat to get rather brown, even more brown. So let that go a little while longer. Once the meat's ready, I'm going to add 2 packages of taco seasoning mix. The meat is finally getting to the brownness that I like. This is how my mom did it, so this is how I do it. Just a couple more minutes. Now I'm adding 2 envelopes of taco seasoning mix. And each one says to add 2/3 cup of water, but I like a little bit more water, so I'm putting in 1 1/2 cups of water. Actually, I'm going to add another half. It will boil away anyway, so in total I added 2 cups of water. I'm going to bring that to a boil. Once it starts boiling, then I'll turn it down and simmer until it gets to the juiciness that I like. While that is cooking down, I'm going to cook the corn. This is the kind of corn I like to use. I'm going to put this in a bowl with a little water and heat it up in the microwave. Okay, all of the components are heated up. The rice is ready. The meat is the right texture. The corn was heated up in the microwave, and I have some canned black beans that are simmering now, so those are ready to go in. So it's been about an hour since the dough went into the refrigerator, so it's time to roll that out. I'm going to set all of these, turn them off, but they'll stay warm while I roll out the dough. Okay, all of the filling components are ready, so it's time to roll out the dough. This dough needs to make a bottom and a top for the pies. So I'm going to cut it in half. I put flour down before I remembered I have this nice pie crust bag that I can use to measure. And my dishes are 6 inches in diameter plus about 1 inch deep. So I want to make an 8 or 9 inch circle. So, oh, it has numbers on it. This has little numbers on it, so somewhere between right about here will be 9 inches. I have my rolling pin set to a 3mm thickness. That's a little bit more than the 10-inch round, so I'm going to try putting that in one of the pie plates. I'm going to spray this with baking spray. It's a very, very soft dough. I'm preheating the oven to 400 degrees. I'm going to blind bake these for 10 minutes to try to reduce any sogginess that ends up in the crust. Here's the other half of that ball. I'm just going to try rolling it out on the bench top. I haven't made too many pies in my life, but I remember now after I did the first one that I'm supposed to get the dough onto the roller. It may not work because this dough is so thin. I might have to roll it on that sheet. You don't want the pie to stretch while you're putting it into the bottom. I'm going to try to do that with this. This dough is so soft. But if I lift up the edge, then I can settle it into the crevices without stretching the dough. Two more. Spray. Okay, to blind bake these, I'm going to take a small piece of parchment paper. if I wrinkle it up like that, it will go down into the crevices easier. I have some pie weights. Hope I have enough. Okay, while those are blind baking, I'm going to mash up the black beans a little bit. And I'm doing that because, again, I want to try to get the meat and the rice and the corn and the beans to all make a nice mass. When it bakes in the pie, hopefully it will stay a mass so that when we cut the pie, it won't just all fall out. We'll see. Since I do have more meat than I will probably need, I'm going to weigh out how much meat I use and how much rice and how much corn, and then add the beans to just the 3 pies that will have beans. I think we'll need at least 4 cups of meat, probably 6. That's almost 200 grams. Let's see how much I have. That's 1 kilogram, or 5 cups. Maybe I will need all of that. I like to mix by eye to see ratios. That means I need to switch the shelves for the blind bake. 500 grams of the rice mixture. I drained the water from the corn. Let's see how much corn we have. $300 grams of corn. I think the only thing that's really going to hold this together in the pie is going to be either some potatoes or bread or eggs. So I'm going to add some eggs. If anybody has other ideas, please let me know. I'm going to whisk these 2 eggs before I put them in. 2 whisked eggs. Okay, the pie crusts are out of the oven and the filling is made. So now I just need to make the top crust. This one looks about the worst. When I pulled the parchment paper off, it broke the crust. So let's fill this one. I'm curious about how much it will take to fill it. Okay, that's 425 grams of the mixture. Now I just need my decorations. So this is the one for me and my husband without the beans. And that one will get the sombrero. So I'm going to lay that sombrero on there so I don't forget. Okay, now this one will have beans but no jalapenos. And I don't just want to add all of the black beans here because I still think I'm going to have some of this meat left, and if I'm going to eat it at my house, we can't have beans in it. So I'm going to put 400 grams of the mixture in this bowl and then mix in some beans. Actually, that's 75 grams of beans. So only 350 grams of the meat mixture. I just realized that I forgot to put cheese in that first one. But I am going to put some cheddar cheese in this one, about a quarter cup, which is about 30 grams. Okay, so the decoration on that one will be the taco. Okay, for the last two, I'm going to add beans and some fresh jalapeno. My husband and I don't like spicy things, and they probably won't even think this is spicy, but most jalapenos from the grocery store don't even have that much spice. So, but hopefully it'll add some flavor. $3.25. Jalapenos. And 75 beans. I rolled this on the wrong side of the pie bag. Just have to cover that up with a chili pepper decoration. Chili pepper. I forgot the cheese in that one. $3.25 of the mixture. 75 of the beans. And 25 jalapeno. 33 grams of cheese, which is a little over a quarter cup. Now I just need to put on the decorations. If I had time, I would use food coloring and paint this, but I have a meeting coming up in 10 minutes, so I'm just going to have to go with no color. I kind of feel like I'm on the show, rushing to get done. Okay, I'm going to put an egg wash on these and then put them in the 400-degree oven for probably about 20 minutes. Certainly until the crust is done. I wish I'd had time to paint these so that they looked more like what they're supposed to be, but sometimes you just don't have time. Okay, well, they are done, and look how pretty they look. This is the sombrero, the taco, chili pepper, and the other chili pepper. Now we're going to have dinner. I'm going to try it, see how it tastes. I'll get back to you and let you know. I'm going to take some of these to work tomorrow, and tomorrow's Pie Day, 3/14, so it seems appropriate anyway. Thanks for watching, and if you are enjoying my baking, the challenges of the Great British Baking Show, please share Baking with Roxy with your friends, and please subscribe. Thank you. Let's see what happens when I cut into it. Very flaky. This is what Paul Hollywood did with theirs. Oh, maybe my crust is too flaky. Well, it didn't come out. You know the first piece never comes out right. So let's try another one. Hey, here we go. That's pretty decent.
I'll turn it around and show it.
Okay, time to eat.